Before we get into this story, I just got to say this. I am so sick and tired of saying, you might have heard this story on my channel before. And at the same time, I'm kind of getting into a little groove, figuring out this whole audio book narration thing. I don't know if you guys can pick up on it, but, you know, I wasn't the most comfortable at the start, but I feel like I'm getting a little better at it. At least it's not taking me as long, you know, to do take after retake or whatever it is. And that said, I knew it was going to be a mountain of a project to get this done, but I didn't realize how long it was going to take. And if I'm only doing one chapter a week, it's going to take forever to get this thing done. So I am going to up the production on these videos. Expect more. And by the end of this week, by golly, yes, I'm so frustrated I said by golly, you're going to get some fresh content, a chapter from my book that has never been shared before on YouTube or any of the social media sites. All that said, even the stories that I have shared on YouTube, the book version is a lot more in depth and interesting, and, you know, it involves things that I couldn't or didn't feel comfortable sharing on YouTube. I actually just got a really cool email from a viewer who purchased the book, and he was pleasantly surprised at, you know, some of the humor, some of the language and the angles and observations that I was, you know, more comfortable sharing in the book because, you know, it's time and place, you know. Without further ado, here is part one of the craziest night of Uber. The footage isn't actual footage from the night it happened, though I do want to share with you, I went down the Uber rabbit hole. I was like deep in the Uber archives trying to find the exact trip. I think I nailed it down. Next time I'm in Jersey, I'm going to try to take a little detour and see if I could find the spot. Yeah, if the neighborhood in the story rings any bells. I remember going north on 295 before getting off. Hope you liked the story, and remember to subscribe.
Chapter 4, The Craziest Single Night of Uber, Part 1. The craziest single night I ever had driving Uber consisted of 3 rides. The first was local. The second brought me from Philly to rural New Jersey, and the third ride in Jersey is where our story begins. In order to fully understand this story, you need to know that, despite its small size, New Jersey runs the gamut of the community spectrum. The big city vibes of New York and Philadelphia bleed into the state, and from those urban centers stem a good chunk of suburban sprawl. Meanwhile, the entire coastline is sprinkled with beach towns that serve as popular vacation destinations every summer. What most people don't realize, though, is that in the middle of it all is a random patchwork of farmlands and small mountains and the kind of neighborhoods that are located off of multi-lane roadways that are littered with strip malls, fast food joints, and stoplights every 50 yards. It's such an overlooked area that the question of, does Central Jersey even exist, is a common debate at dinner tables stretching from Delco to Long Island. On this particular night, I was summoned by the Uber gods to the mysterious realm of Central Jersey to perhaps the weirdest neighborhood I have ever seen in my entire life. I was on a road so wide it could have been a highway, yet it had a speed limit of 35. When my GPS directed me onto a dark, empty side street, I drove for about a quarter mile. Then, with no other house or building in sight, across from a cornfield, the most random neighborhood I'd ever see appeared out of nowhere. Dozens of old row homes on a small plot of land, as if somebody extracted a handful of city blocks from a rough part of Philly and dropped them in an empty field. It was 1:30 a.m. on a Saturday in the summer, and it seemed like the entire neighborhood was outside. I didn't know if this was typical or if I'd caught the tail end of a block party, but there were kids playing on front lawns, teenagers hanging on the corner, and adults sitting on their porches drinking. I could see that it was a racially diverse neighborhood, and I wondered, does a neighborhood that's made up of row houses on farmland qualify as urban or rural or both? On the way to find my passengers, I passed by an old black man sitting in front of his house in a lawn chair with a trucker hat on and a can in his hand. He was sitting next to an old box stereo blaring country music so loud it echoed throughout the entire neighborhood. Where the hell am I thought. I was waiting at the pickup location for a few minutes, soaking in the experience and enjoying the aforementioned country music playing a few blocks away, before my passenger finally came out. It was a young white dude wearing a do-rag and a beater. The first thing he says to me is, "My N-words will be here in just a minute." Except he didn't say N-word. Now, there are few things in this world that make me more uncomfortable than when a white dude I don't know uses the N-word. And I don't mean like I think he's racist or I get personally offended, so don't think I'm posturing to appear accepting or woke or any of that nonsense. I mean that when a white dude uses that word as a term of endearment, it can only mean two things. Either he has absolutely no idea about the way society works, or he does and he doesn't care. Either way, it's a major red flag and is not the type of person I'd be particularly excited about sitting behind me. Anyway, after a minute or so, his N-words come out. A guy and girl, both white, and both looking like they could be extras in Breaking Bad. For the record, I've never seen Breaking Bad, but I have seen meth addicts, and they fit the bill. The girl sits in the front, and the two dudes get in the back. Everyone seemed to be acting funny, and I assumed that they were either high or socially awkward or both. It would be about a half an hour ride, and there wasn't much chatter during it until about halfway through, when the girl asked if we could stop at a CVS. She told me it was a bit out of the way, but that she would direct me. I figured she wanted something drug-related, but that's not my business. Driving is. And nothing cuts into my hourly rate more than when a passenger wants to stop and shop as I sit and wait for them. And I know what you're thinking. Don't you get paid to wait? Yeah, I get paid about 10 cents a minute. You know what you can get for 10 cents a minute? Loads and loads of credit card debt. I told her I don't make stops as it really cuts into my earnings. This is when normal people offer me cash to make it worth my time. But she took a different route. I really need a tampon. It's, my time. A lesser man might have caved due to shock value, but unfortunately for her, I used to teach high school math. And nothing sets off my BS meter more than when a girl inserts something like that so comfortably into the conversation. When it would happen in my classroom as an adult male teacher that wanted to keep his job, I'd have to bite my tongue from confronting a teenage girl with, "Look, smartass, I know there is no way your time of the month just happens to coincide with every quiz and test we have, you lying little cheater." But unlike teaching, the beautiful thing about Uber is that the only boss I have to answer to is me. And what I really wanted to say to her obvious bullshit was, "Lady, you don't have to lie to me. I don't care if you inject yourself with a tampon or a needle. The only thing I care about is making my rent this month." But instead of saying that, I took the high road and simply said, "I'm sorry, I really can't." That's one thing I've learned while working for myself. Now that I have the freedom to say the things I couldn't say when I had a job, I find it much easier to refrain. It's funny how much more patience a man has when he doesn't feel controlled. "Please, I really need to stop." She was not letting this go. "How about if we pass by one and you promise to be quick, I'll stop." I wasn't about to go out of my way to lose money, but if we were driving right past one, I'd feel like an asshole if I didn't stop. As I started to wonder whether I'm a nice guy or just a sucker, I noticed a girl look back at Do-Rag Beater Boy in seeming disappointment. That was odd, I thought. We didn't pass by a pharmacy, but as we got closer to the destination, Do-Rag Beater Boy's friend asked if I can drop him off separately. "If you turn right at the next light, I'm just a minute up the road. I'll tell you where to stop." I felt bad about the pharmacy situation. I guess I'm definitely a sucker. And him jumping out of the car a minute up the road is no big deal, so I agreed, without hesitation. I turned and drove a minute out of the way. And then 2 minutes. And then 5. Remember, this is Central Jersey. All signs of civilization are slowly fading away. I finally ask, how much further am I heading? Almost together, the two guys responded, "Oh, I'm right up the road. Just make a left after the train tracks." That was another red flag. If I hadn't asked, would they have said anything? So I go over the train tracks and I make the left onto a long, dark, empty road. There was only one streetlight, and when I passed by that lone streetlight, I looked up ahead and saw nothing but darkness and trees. There was not a single house in sight. It was then that I noticed in my rearview mirror, Do-Rag Beater Boy was perked up like a pit bull ready to pounce, staring directly at me. My spidey senses went through the fucking roof. This is it. It's about to go down. Feel free to call me sexist, but the 95-pound girl sitting in my passenger seat might as well not even existed at that point. My only focus was, how the fuck am I gonna handle two cracked out dudes sitting behind me? My first thought was about the knife I keep accessible in a hidden location. I always thought I was being responsible and safe by keeping one handy for times like this. Now that I was actually in a situation where I thought I might use it, I realized, what the hell am I gonna do with a knife? I've never been in a knife fight before. I don't have the first fucking clue on what to do with it, especially in a close combat situation with two guys sitting behind me while I'm belted in. If I pulled it out, the most likely outcome was me getting stabbed with my own weapon. So I had to think on my feet. I cocked my steering wheel just so and put my car in reverse. The dudes in the back weren't wearing seatbelts, so my plan was, the second this thing escalated, brace myself, punch the gas, and launch this Honda Civic square into that light pole. I hoped to God that would be enough to at least stun them and give myself time to make an exit. I lifted my left foot onto the brake and slid my right foot onto the gas pedal. My adrenaline was through the roof and I was ready to rock. But despite that, as calm and cool as I could be, I said, "Look, I can either drive you to your original destination or you can get out here, but I'm not going down that road." What I was really saying was, are we going to do this the easy way or are we going to do this the hard way? Yippee-ki-yay, motherfuckers! I could feel the contemplation permeate from the back seat. And just as Do-Rag Beater Boy and his N-words considered whether or not they would attempt to rob me, I kid you not, on the road I just turned off of, a cop car, sirens blaring and lights on, flies down the street so fast it looked as though he caught air going over the train tracks. He passed right behind us and zoomed down that perpendicular road. This made me even more nervous because I now knew that if I had to call 911, the closest cop is busy doing something else. But fortunately, generally speaking, criminals are idiots, and they didn't recognize that a cop speeding away from you is actually the best time to commit a crime. Instead, they were visibly shaken up. "We'll just get out here," Do-Rag Beater Boy said, defeat in his voice. And that's when I knew I wasn't being paranoid. If you remember, initially, it was just the one guy that said he wanted to get dropped off there. But now all three of them were getting out? In the middle of nowhere? Miles away from the original destination? The next day, out of curiosity, I Google mapped the location where they got out and where I would have headed had I continued down that road. It was nothing but woods for miles and miles and miles. It's kind of crazy to think about what might have happened if I didn't listen to my gut. It was a little after 2 a.m. when they got out of my car, and I felt like I had just dodged a bullet, or more realistically, a self-inflicted stab wound. I decided to call it a night and head home. But minutes after crossing the bridge back into Pennsylvania, my first rider of the night called me on my cell phone. And that is where part 1 of this story ends, and part 2 will begin.
Part 2 should be up soon, and thanks for watching.